of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now do the report out from actions taken in closed session. 7.1 is the possible expulsion of student 1818 from all regular schools in the Mount Diablo Unified School District.
Madam President, I move that the board approve the hearing panel's recommendation that student number 18-18 be expelled from all schools of the Mount Diablo Unified School District, and that student number 18-18 may apply for readmission after Friday, December 21st, 2018. Prior to readmission, student number 18-18 is required to complete a readmission plan with the following conditions. Student must participate in 20 hours of individual counseling to address anger management, perform 30 hours of community services, attend Mount Diablo Saturday workshop for appropriate behavior and anger management, show evidence of a successful school experience without having committed a violation of the education code, reasonably warranting a suspension, and maintain at least a 2.0 GPA, completing 50 credits to continue on course for a timely graduation, and having a 90% attendance rate and being on time to school.
Thank you. Second. Passes with 4 yeses and 1 abstention. Thank you. Next on the 7.2 for the possible discipline, dismissal, release, or reassignment of public employees. The board took the following action. We ratified the hearing officer's recommendation. We authorized notice to transfer a certified employee. We gave direction to staff to proceed with dismissal of 1 public employee, and we've received information on the other case. 7.3, which was anticipated litigation, conference with legal counsel. We received information. 7.4, conference with negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 549576. We received information. And item 7.5, conference with real property negotiators, Government Code 549568, property, a portion of district property on Oak Park Boulevard in Pleasant Hill, California. We received information on that one as well. And that concluded our closed session. That takes us to public comment. The public may address the board regarding any item within the jurisdiction of the Board of Education of the Mount Diablo Unified School District that is not on this agenda. These presentations are limited to 3 minutes each, or a total of 30 minutes for all speakers, or the 3-minute limit may be shortened. If there are multiple speakers on any one subject, the public comment period may be moved to the end of the meeting. Speakers are not allowed to yield their time. The board operates under the Brown Act, which means we can do 1 or 3 things during public comment. We can ask you a clarifying question, we can refer you to a staff member, or we can put your item on a future agenda. So please do not think if we're not answering your questions that we're not hearing you. We're just trying to be responsible. Our first public comment is Karen Jenkins.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Karen Jenkins. I'm a teacher at Northgate High School. I'm also a member of the Staff Senate at Northgate, and I'm the liaison for the PFC between staff and PFC. And I'm also a parent. I just had a student graduate. She was my second of 3. And on behalf of Northgate staff, we want to thank Dr. Meyer and the other staff members and board members who came to our graduation. And they were so pleased to have Brian Lawrence and Chris Halloran and Dr. Meyer there and speaking, and several staff members asked me to relay that information. And we also appreciate the time that staff members made to come to our senior project presentations and be on the panel. That was Mike Jimenez and Chris Halloran. So thank you very much for all you do.
My clarifying comment is At the last meeting, I apologize, that was the one graduation I didn't make, because I had a math meeting that night, which I chair, but I will be there next year. Thank you. And that was it for public comment. We are on recognitions and resolutions. So we are recognizing some of our hardworking committee members for their leadership in district-wide parent organizations, and I think Dr. Myers did the first voice.
Yes, in the spirit of thank yous and gratefulness. Now, as we end the year, we have so many people who volunteer their time and who contribute and work very hard on our committees. And so tonight, on behalf of our district, I would like all of us to recognize them. So we have some of our people in the audience. So to start out, I would like to recognize our CAC chair, Dorothy Weisenberger. And when I say her name, if you don't mind standing up so we can applaud or walking in, whenever you'd like to do that. And the CAC is kind of a dynamic duo. And so I would also like to recognize Denise Lambert for her wonderful work. Thank you. And we go through the whole group, and then we have a plaque so you can remember this. I would also like to thank our CAC is such a thriving large group that contributes in many ways. So we're very grateful for the work that you do. And we also have our District English Learner Advisory Committee. And this is a group that I think has doubled or tripled in size in the last few years. So I would like to recognize our president, Francisco Rios, if he would please stand. And another dynamic duo, I would like to recognize our vice president, Jorge Cardenas. Thank you so much. And then we have two other committees I'd like to, that are of note. And one is someone who has been our District Bond Oversight Committee chair. And this person has been in numerous iterations of advisory capacity in our district on Measure A, Measure C, Measure C, the second, and really does great work in advising us as a district and leading that group. So John Ferrante, if you would please stand, John. Thank you. A quick up and down. And then lastly, as part of our advisory committees, I would like to recognize our Parent Teacher Association lead, Sarah Zaccoli. Sarah is the president of the Mount Diablo Council of PTA. She took on this mantle of leadership this year. And so she works with all of the PTA presidents across the district, and they meet monthly to talk about ways to help us improve and to coordinate. So I'm going to now, if you don't mind, step down to hand out the plaques.
There needs to be a better flow, but thought I'd come to you. So, Dorothy, let's go in order. Yes. I'll go, where were you in this one? Oh, okay. Denise Lambert, Vice Chair of the CAC. I think he wants to send this to you. Okay, thank you. All right, yay. Francisco Rios. We've had a takeover. All of the board members on the DLAC have gone from female to male, but we welcome that. So Francisco, congratulations. Thank you. Great job. Thank you. All right. And Jorge Cardenas. Jorge. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Ferrante, come
up
on
here.
down. This is beautiful, by the way. Thank you for all you do. Thank you. There you go. You're gonna have to take a picture with me. Okay. Looks like my kids when I make them get in a photo. And last but not least, Sarah Zaccoli. Sarah. Okay, a lot more work to do.
Yes, you
But thank you. All right, thank you to all of you.
Running up for the next, it's public employee appointments. And we're going to start with the appointment of administrator for equity and disproportionality.
Thank you. President Mason, board members, I would like to recommend to you for the position of Administrator Equity and Disproportionality, Jorge Melgoza. Jorge comes to us with a Bachelor's of Arts from UC Berkeley in Chicano Studies. He also has a Master's of Arts from UC Berkeley in Educational Administration. He has experience as principal at Realm Charter School in Berkeley. He was a high school principal at Berkeley Unified School District. He was a middle school vice principal in San Leandro, and he also has experience as an intervention coordinator, instructional coach, and interim dean in Berkeley Unified. So I would like to recommend Jorge Melgoza for the position of Administrator, Equity, and Disproportionality.
Madam President, I move the approval of Jorge Melgoza as Administrator, Equity, and Disproportionality.
Second.
If you have anybody here with you, you can introduce them.
Yes, I do. My wife Adelaida, please stand, and my son Jorge Roman Jr. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias, and I'm really excited about joining this community. Thank you.
Congratulations. Next, we have appointment of principal middle school, Foothill Middle School. Dr. Meyer?
Yes, board members, I would like to recommend for middle school principal, Foothill Middle School, Kimberly Viana. Kimberly comes to us with a Bachelor's of Arts from Chapman University in Social Science. She also has a Master's from St. Mary's in Teaching and Social Emotional Learning. She has experience as an assistant principal in Doherty Valley High School, and she also has been a core and leadership teacher at Windermere Ranch Middle School in San Ramon, as well as a core teacher at Pine Valley Middle School in San Ramon. So I would like to recommend Kimberly Viana for the position of Foothill Middle School principal.
Madam President, I move that the board approve the appointment of Kimberly Viana as principal, Foothill Middle School.
Second.
Thank you.
One point of clarification on my voting, it's coming across as principal of Pine Hollow Middle School, but I'm sure we can.
Mine says Foothill, yours says Foothill. Oh, it's a Foothill at the top right.
I was just worried she knew that I choose.
That's what I thought you were going to
Foothill,
say, yeah.
So she was.
Thank you. I would like to thank the president of the board and all the board members and Dr. Meyer for this opportunity. I'm honored to serve the Foothill community and am very excited. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
about my husband, Mike?
Now we have appointment of principal middle school, Pine Hollow Middle School, Dr. Meyer.
Yes, board members, I would like to recommend for the position of Principal Pine Hollow Middle School, Ben Campopiano. Ben comes to us with a Bachelor's of Arts from St. Mary's College in Public Communications. He also has an administrative credential as well as a single subject credential in social science. He has experience as Vice Principal, Northgate High School, also teacher on special assignment in Mount Diablo Unified. He has experience as founder of Bronco Baseball Academy, a social studies teacher at Northgate High School, and director of baseball operations in Santa Clara. He comes to us with experience teaching psychology, government, economics, what a great group of subjects, as well as a teacher in Pittsburgh. So I would like to recommend Ben Campopiano for the position of Principal Pine Hollow Middle School.
Madam President, I move that the board approve the appointment of Ben Campopiano as principal with assignment at Pine Hollow Middle School.
Second.
President Mason, board members, Dr. Meyer, thank you so much. This is a great honor. I grew up in this district, and my mom was a teacher in this district, so this is a great honor. Thank you. I look forward to this opportunity to work with Pine Hollow staff and parents and students. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Next, we have appointment of Principal Elementary School, Cambridge Elementary.
Yes, board president, board members, I would like to recommend for the position of Cambridge Elementary, Lourdes Beleche. Lourdes comes to us with a Bachelor's of Arts from UC Berkeley in Chicano Studies. She also has a multiple subject credential. She has experience as principal at Rio Vista Elementary. She also has experience as vice principal at Cambridge Elementary, and she was a teacher as well at Cambridge Elementary. She won this little thing called Teacher of the Year, MDUSD's Teacher of the Year. And with that, I would like to recommend Lourdes Beleche for the position of Principal, Cambridge Elementary.
Madam President, I move that the board approve the appointment of Lourdes Beleche as principal, Cambridge Elementary.
Second. And that passes 5.
Dr. Meyer, President Mason, and members of the board, I want to thank you for this opportunity to serve my community at Cambridge Elementary School. Muchas gracias.
Lourdes, I want to thank you, Lourdes. I want to thank you for the year you spent in Bay Point. We appreciated you very much. I understand you want to go back to family quarters.
Definitely. And I forgot, I do have my husband with me.
Oh,
And my son is home. Thank you.
Welcome. Next, we have appointment of Principal Elementary School, Meadow Homes Elementary, Dr. Meyer.
Yes, board members, I would like to recommend for the position of Meadow Homes Elementary Principal, Catherine Fireman. Catherine comes to us with a Bachelor's of Arts from University of Oregon in psychology and Spanish. She also has a master's from National University in early childhood literacy. She has experience as vice principal at Meadow Homes Elementary. She was the director of school culture at Achieve Academy. She also has been an instructional literacy ELD coach, as well as a K-1 teacher in Oakland Unified Ascend School. So I would like to recommend Catherine Fireman for the position of Meadow Homes Elementary Principal.
Madam President, I move that the board approve the appointment of Catherine Fireman as a principal to be assigned to Meadow Homes Elementary School.
Second? Thank you. And it passes by
Dr. Meyer and the board, thank you so much. I really am excited about this privilege and honor to serve the families and students of Meadow Homes, and I'm really excited for a great year next year. Thank you. Muchas gracias. And I have a few of my family members here, my husband Ugo, my son Benjamin, my daughter Sage, and one of my kids is away at sleepaway camp who can't be with us tonight, but we're really excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Next, we have appointment of principal elementary school, Rio Vista Elementary. Dr. Meyer?
President Mason, board members, I would like to recommend for the position of Rio Vista Elementary School Principal, Liz Lanfranchi Law. Liz comes to us with a Bachelor's of Arts from Cal State Chico in Liberal Studies. She also has a Master's of Arts from UC Berkeley in Educational Leadership. She has experience as another Contra Costa Teacher of the Year, a little easy thing to win, I hear. I don't know. But we're very proud of that. She also was City of Pittsburgh Chamber of Commerce Educator of the Year and Pittsburgh Unified District Teacher of the Year. Martin Luther King Junior High School Teacher of the Year and Woodlake School District Teacher of the Semester. Had to share that one. But we're very proud. She has also been vice principal at Hidden Valley and Gregory Gardens. She was a teacher in Pittsburgh for many years, as well as a middle school teacher in Woodlake School District. So I would like to recommend Liz Lanfranchi Law for the position of Rio Vista Principal.
Madam President, I move that the board approve the appointment of Liz Lanfranchi Law as principal, Rio Vista Elementary.
Second.
And that passes.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank the board. I'm extremely grateful to be given the chance to lead Rio Vista. Bay Point is a community I'm extremely passionate about. It has a rich culture and a rich history. It's truly a gem in our district. It's a community I care deeply about, and I really look forward to building relationships with students and their parents. Thank you, Dr. Meyer, and thank you, Mr. Espinoza. I really appreciate all of your support over the past few years. I'm extremely grateful for your leadership and your advocacy for traditionally underserved student populations. I believe in the equity work we're doing in this district, and I'm committed to helping close the achievement gap for all of our students. Finally, I'd like to thank my husband, Nick, and my son back there, who I brought here. I'm looking forward to a new chapter at Rio Vista and a great school year. Thank you.
Next, we have appointment of principal elementary school, Ignacio Valley Elementary. Dr. Meyer.
Yes, President Mason and board, I would like to recommend for the position of Ignacio Valley Elementary Principal, Sylvia Orellana, I looked at that, I thought I checked that. Orellana? Yes. Close. Orellana. Sylvia comes to us with a Bachelor of Science from University of Phoenix in Business Management. She also has a Master's of Education from St. Mary's College in Teaching Leadership. She currently is the Vice Principal at Rio Vista and Short Acres Elementary School. She has experience as a beginning teacher support coach and a PAR coach in Mount Diablo. She also has been a school district writing liaison in San Jose Unified School District, as well as an English learner department coordinator at St. James School in Buenos Aires. So I would like to recommend Sylvia Orellana for the position of Principal, Ignacio Valley Elementary School.
I'm going to try this. I have a degree in French. You're going to have to excuse me. Madam President, I move that the board appoint Sylvia Oriano. I'm close. As principal of Ignacio Valley Elementary.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Maya, for this opportunity. Board members, thank you so much. As a principal at Ignacio Valley Elementary, I aspire to create an environment that promotes college readiness. I also believe this is our moral imperative. And as an advocate for equity, I will work intensively to create equal opportunities for all of my children at Ignacio Valley Elementary. So thank you so much for this opportunity. It's an honor to serve in this capacity now. And I would like to introduce you to my family. My daughter is in college right now, so she cannot make it. But she's the product of Mount Diablo. And I'd like to introduce you my husband, Sergio Barrera. And my son, Alan Barrera Orellana. Thank you so much. Congratulations.
And we'll miss you later. Appointment of Vice Principal Middle School for Pleasant Hill Middle School.
Yes, President Mason, board members, I would like to recommend for the position of Pleasant Hill Middle School Vice Principal, Amy Nichols. Amy comes to us with a Bachelor's of Arts from Cal State Chico in PE and Teacher Education. She also holds a Master's from Cal State Chico in Adapted PE. She has experience as an education specialist from Martinez Junior High and John Sweat Elementary School. She also has experience as an education specialist at Stanley Middle School and Lafayette Elementary School, as well as experience teaching physical education at Stanley Middle School. So I would like to recommend Amy Nichols for the position of Vice Principal, Pleasant Hill Middle.
Go ahead. We try to kind of share these. It is a name I can't pronounce, but I'm going to pass over here.
Madam President, I move that the board approve the appointment of Amy Nichols as vice principal in our school district with assignment at Northgate High School.
Pleasant Hill Middle.
Although, no.
Too late, we already picked one.
I guess I apologize, my system had jumped. I apologize. Pleasant Hill Middle.
Second.
All right.
Board President, board members, and Superintendent Myers, I just want to thank you very much for this opportunity to serve the Pleasantville Middle School community and Mount Diablo Unified School District. I brought my husband Sam with me tonight, and my two children, my daughter Ruth, and my son Tommy.
Madam President,
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to compliment the superintendent and staff on such a talented and diverse group of candidates, and it's very exciting to see all the appointments. So, job well done, and thank you.
And this is a time for board reports, and this is usually when everybody chooses to leave, and we understand. We will not be offended. There's a lot of children that want to get over. Thank you.
That's half the place is empty.
Okay, let's see, what side should I start? Okay, Mr. Q. I have a feeling she'd be ready. All right.
I was ready to.
I start with you last. Yeah.
I don't have good memories, so I have to write it down.
That's why you figured if you start, you cover about half of my Sundays.
So on June 13th, actually Ms. Hanson and I had the opportunity to visit an engineering camp. So every year, the Contra Costa Economic Partnership provides this fabulous camp experience for students, high school students from throughout the area. It's not just for Mount Diablo Unified. And so we visited what's called again the engineering camp. It's held at Death Valley College. And it was really fun because we got to, these camps are organized, again, by the Contra Costa Economic Partnership, but in partnership with business partners who actually provide staff to actually teach in the programs, as well as teachers from our school district. So we had a chance to kind of barge in and chat with some of the business partners who were teaching, including Chris Pedrosa from the Carpenters Union, Local 152. There were 3 young engineers. I got their names. I figured I'd share. Aaron Little Mentonian, Oliver Guerrera, and Nick Lever. And then they brought one of their summer interns, a college intern, who's working with them. And they're with Corteva AgriScience, which is a division of Dow DuPont. And then the last one was Zen Toolworks, the local small company. Zen Chan and his partner R.D. Moza Neum, who is also a DVC engineering faculty member. So we got to see what they were each doing with the students, including building a toolbox, right? A wooden toolbox very quickly, like in an hour to do it. The folks from Dow were having them do this experiment of different substances and liquids in a container and not let them get mixed up, so they had to do some analysis of weight, etc. And then a group that was working on robotics and a group that was doing 3D programming 3D printer. So then our 2 teachers from FW5 are Greg Lyons, who's a teacher I've known for years from Northgate High School. He was actually a lead teacher, and another teacher at Noel, Marcus Thomas from College Park High School. So there were actually 7 students from Mount Diablo Unified out of 62 students that are attending this. All the students get college credit on their high school transcript for participating in this. So it's a great thing. And then the bioscience I think was this past week, and this week I think is solar. I think so. We're hoping. I'm trying to visit some more. Same day was Project Access Celebration, which is an annual event held through Mount Diablo Adult Education. It's a graduation of a program of students who attend the adult school to develop their ESL English skills in the context of early childhood education. So they've indicated an interest in early childhood education. So they're working on building up their English skills. And then there's a warm handoff to Diablo Valley College Early Childhood Education Program, which are actually getting college credits in that program, earning a certificate. Some go on for an AA degree, but they continue to get the English language support while they're there. It's been around for a long time. It's a really great partnership and a great graduation to participate in. They all received certificates from Congressman DeSaulnier and County Supervisor Karen Mitchell. On June 19th, I represented Mount Deb Unified at the grand opening of John Muir Health's new behavioral health outpatient center on Fort Chicago Highway. Their program is expanded tremendously. Kind of good news, bad news. The bad news is there's a need for expansion. The good news is that they're doing it. They are one of the few medical organizations that's actually expanding their services for mental health and substance use. So it's a great re-renovated building. It was really nice, and it's, they have a program specifically for youth that is that has great outcomes, great success. So it was nice to be part of that. The 20th, I attended the Budget Advisory Committee, and once again, Nancy Jr. and Rose Ramos updated us on some kind of minor changes to the state budget. And I think they're somewhat net neutral, a little bit about that. But there was really good turnout for this meeting, I thought, in particular. So part of what was happening is we were reviewing people's terms, and hopefully we'll keep making sure there's good representation, because they're always really, really informative. So thank you for that. And then the 21st, I attended the Citizen Bond Oversight Committee, which was actually held at Concord High, which is a little different. Prior to the meeting, there was the opportunity to tour Concord High to see all the work that was done there under Measure C, which is phenomenal. It's a lot has been done there. So we were given information on the facilities master, the group was, I should say, master planning contractor, which we approved here at Master Plan in our last meeting. And a little bit about the process, which will start with the meeting in July. There's a PowerPoint presentation on the possible bond measure for November ballot. And there was a vote on the chair for next year. It wasn't quite unanimous. There's one objecting vote, was John Ferrante, but he graciously agreed to continue on, so we appreciate that. So they will be doing their annual report to the board in August. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hanson?
Mrs. Durkee remembers all the names. When we went to this camp at DVC, I remember the projects. And I remember I took an adult ed course in wood shop, and it took me 6 weeks to make a stupid little 2-shelf bookcase, which I later threw away. These kids produced an entire toolbox in about an hour or two and walked out, and it was usable. The handles didn't fall off. I was so impressed with that. But what was really impressive were the business partnerships and the interest in our students, and they're really, really interested. This is what I find more and more of, and I said, I'm one of those that has promoted the high school to college path, and I'm encountering more and more with our business people who are so interested in how they can partner with school districts around not dissuading kids from going to college, but how they can find opportunities for them within their businesses. Because we're a feeder pattern, not just for colleges, we're a feeder pattern to our local businesses as well. And they have all sorts of opportunities. So I was impressed with their, and April Trees, we can thank her because she's hung in there and been so dedicated. I had to miss the CAC planning meeting, which occurred, and I have never even been to one, but and then I had to miss the Bond Oversight Committee meeting, which I can't vote for anyway, so Mr. Ferrani wouldn't have been hurt or helped by me. I'm not a voting member. But I had to miss those 2 meetings because that night Dr. Meyer and Mrs. Mayo and I went to an East Bay leadership meeting, and it's another group of East Bay leaders, business people who get together, and I think Dr. Meyer's on what are you on now, the advisory board? You're on the board now. And I think I figured out that night why she is, not just because she's smart and relevant, but because it's another group of local business leaders who are interested in K-12 education and how they can partner and help us. And that's what I'm finding more and more of, is this really, interest in that. And I think that's why we're lucky Dr. Meyer's on that, because she's a good representative for K-12 education and beyond, preschool through adult. But I think there was a motive there to get her connected. And so we look forward to those partnerships. And other than that, that was it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. On the 14th of June, I was able to attend the summer lunch kickoff at Cambridge Elementary School. Community partners were there, as well as the Contra Costa Food Bank and the CARES After School program. And Mr. Leone promoted activities for youth provided by the City of Concord. And the lunch was amazing, as evidenced by the individuals enjoying the lunch, including all of the adults that attended. On the 20th, I attended the budget advisory meeting with Mrs. Durkee. On the 20th, the next day I attended the Fair Oaks STEM Camp Invention Summer Program, which is sponsored or presented by the CARES After School program. And in this program, middle school students participate as interns, and the program was for students K through 5th grade, and there are 5 modules. One was OptiBot, one is a robotic module, one was a game modules, one was a mod mansion, and the 5th one was a stick to it. So in each of these science or each of these modules, students were challenged to advance, or what do I want to say, further a scientific study or experiment, and imagine what they might be able to do and to make an invention go even further. So it was a lot of hands-on activities. I loved the blood one, and so did the students. And they had the robotic one. They had a mechanical device that when you drew on a piece of paper, the optic part of it would follow the line drawn on paper by a felt pen. So it was very engaging for the students. They could create things that they wanted this particular robot to do. And then the other thing I went to, next year the program will be presented at the middle school, so it will be a more advanced level, and high school students will serve as interns. So eventually there will be a K-12 continuum possibly for the CARES After School program in this particular camp invention. I attended the East Bay Leadership Council installation, and what I would like to comment about is that the retiring chair, Patty Deutsch from Endeavor, was recognized, and Sharon Jenkins from John Muir Hospital was installed as the chair of the East Bay Leadership Council. And Mount Diablo is indebted to these 2 women for furthering education, not only across the county, but also within Mount Diablo School District. So they are very strong supporters of public education. And I just want to remind everybody to have a safe and sane 4th of July. The cities of Pleasant Hill and Concord in particular are having events benefiting families and communities. And the Pleasant Hill Firecracker Run registration benefits public schools of your choice in Pleasant Hill. So sign up and participate in the Firecracker Run.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence?
I will pass, thank you.
That's why you were ready.
You called me first, you know.
I know, I never know. I actually represent Mount Diablo School District on the Keller Mitigation Grant Committee. So since our last meeting, I've read 102 grants, and then we did 102 interviews of everybody. So that's what I was doing, and why I missed a lot of these events, because I was tied up in Supervisor Glover's office for the last week. But I did go out to, there's a Unity and Community event that we have in Bay Point, and I was out there meeting with parents over the week on Saturday when it was 105 degrees in the shade. And I also visited Riverview Summer School, and it looked like all the kids were having a great time, as well as the staff. And today, my husband and I started our Teen Garden Corps program that we do every year in Bay Point for teens to come out and work with us in the garden in the summer and earn a $500 stipend. So if I'm a little loopy tonight, that's probably why, because I'm getting in shape again. I've got a long haul. We do it the whole month of July. So with that, we'll go to the superintendent.
All right, thank you. Well, while we are here, our students are in France. This is a picture of the El Dorado Toros and the Concord Minutemen who are on a tour of Europe, and they look pretty darn happy. So to go ahead and start, as you heard mentioned in the some of the comments from some of our appointees, the district's focus and goal is to close the achievement gap, to recognize that challenging students is a moral imperative, and to make sure that we provide those options upon exiting our program. So we heard bits of that also in your conversation. So there it is. The check mark looks like the color changed. Maybe our light bulb is it's not red. Okay, yeah, it's kind of something. The apple's red too. Reminds me of a bad Snow White flashback. Summer school is up and running. Thank you to Jennifer Sachs, our principals, our teachers, and our classified staff who were there. In case you just wanted a reminder, Cambridge, Gregory Gardens, Meadow Home, Shore Acres, Silverwood, Sun Terrace, and Woodside are the elementaries. Oak Grove, Pleasant Hill, Riverview, the middles, and College Park, Loma Vista Adult Center, Olympic, Riverview also has a high school program, and YV has a high school program. So as you're thinking about where you might want to, check out some student work this summer, those are the places that they are available. Also looking at some pictures, you can see there's summer school, Woodside on the left and Cambridge on the right. And then the color just doesn't do it justice. I think that but you can see the summer lunch kickoff was a great success. We had city council, we had Concord PD, we had principals, we had district staff, and the food was delicious. They had all sorts of different options, and the students were having a great time. They had a clown, they had a storyteller, they had quite an event. Bubbles, yes, I won't mention the bubble incident, but it was fun. They had a great time. And here, the camp invention at Fair Oaks, you can see pictures of it, and they had opportunities to put things together, and you can see the group there in front of Fair Oaks. And it's kind of hard to see, but at the upper left, that was a robotic dog that they made. And so they really were able to spend the day doing some creative things. Also, STEM camp, we've had that at Riverview and at Valley View with our teachers Shauna Hawes and Margaret Elliott. And we've also have a boys camp. Then we've also had Sequoia Middle, but funded by Tesoro or Endeavor Now and Patty Deutsch's support. And so kind of see some of the computer work that they're doing and their group photos. So the boys camp obviously up there in the top photo. And, we have a lot of recognitions of late, but here's another one, the All-Star Teacher of the Year, and this was Corey Starr, a science teacher at Northgate High School. She received this, and here she is. I believe it was at the Oakland A's game. I know that they had a vote that went on, and many people voted on the top candidates. And there she is with that award. So that was a great success, and we'll be publicizing more of that. But wanted to give that to you hot off the press. And then also, because it's summer, I made a shortened version. So we had a long graduation version last time. So I wanted to thank you for the last board meeting of this 2017-18 year and just send my appreciation. So thank you very much.
You as well. We are on to the consent agenda. Items listed under consent agenda are considered routine and will be approved or adopted by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items. However, any item may be removed from the consent agenda upon the request of any member of the board and acted upon separately. Do we have any requests to remove anything from the consent agenda?
I have some items that I'd like to remove. Okay. 1329, 1330, 1331, 1340, and 1345. 45? Yep.
Any others? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
President, I move the board approve the consent agenda minus 13.29, 30, 31, 40, and 45, which will be considered separately.
Thank you very much. Second. Thank you. We did. It was Cheryl Hansen and Joanne Berkey. Told you I'd be busy tonight. Okay, that passes 5-0. Now, we will deal with the other. Starting with 14.1, open purchase order in the amount of $125,000 with the Department of Justice for fingerprinting.
So I don't have a particular question, though I did have an interest in what our volume of fingerprinting was during this last year. I don't know if Lisa has the opportunity to provide that information at this point in time, but I wanted to highlight this because we provide the fingerprinting for families, and it is important that they contact the personnel department to arrange for that fingerprinting prior to the start of school, so that they can begin with the field trips and classroom experiences right away at the start of school.
So as far as the volume, other than a lot, I can look for some more specific information, but it has greatly increased, as have our volunteers. And we certainly are very pleased with how our Human Resource Department not only has evening hours, they have appointments now to expedite, and they arrange nights for entire schools to come. And we have had some remote fingerprinting locations as well. So thank you for highlighting that.
So I would move that the board approve item now 14.1, the open purchase order for $125,000 with the Department of Justice for fingerprinting.
Second.
Thank you.
Passes 5-0. And that would be purchase order for Frontline Technologies Group for the annual fee for employee absence and substitute management system for the 2018-19 school year.
I was asking the question whether or not this is the first time the board has seen this particular invoice and contract, and whether or not we have seen the contract itself.
Okay, and I'm not aware of that, so I have two people. So I believe
This is the first time it's been brought.
it is the first time?
Yeah.
Okay, so it is the first time that it's been brought to the board?
There was a name change.
It was a name change.
Smartfind Express. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the same company, but they changed their name.
Okay.
So thus the looks new.
That's why I didn't recognize it. All right. So, Madam President, I would move that the board approve
Thank you.
the purchase order with Frontline Technologies for the annual fee for the employee absence and substitute management system for the 2018-19 school year.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, next would be purchase of equipment, tools, materials. Oh, sorry. I warned y'all.
Yesterday, something.
Forget democracy. Oh, okay, purchase of equipment, tools, materials, and supplies. It's up there, look at 500. Purchase of equipment, tools, materials, and supplies for Ignacio Valley High School's project Lead the Way course for Patton Group.
So I was just hoping that someone would be able to explain all of the equipment. I can surmise what's going on in this particular, with these purchases, but I wanted to highlight the course and the new equipment. For example, there's a laser cutter for $33,000, it looks like, but I'm not sure. There's a 3D laser printer with software for $35,000. There's a 12-station milling machine and air compressor with other items for $60,000. So it sounds like an exciting class, and I hope to hear more about it.
So, and what is exciting is that is an expansion of the engineering program at Ignacio Valley High School. Regarding the specifics of what the equipment does, I'm hearing a request for perhaps a report on some of these unusually big type of items. The laser cutter we have in other places and are using in our other engineering, as far as the laser printer, the 3D printers are exciting as well. I would have to end there. I would say that some of the other equipment, which is high-priced equipment, and so we can certainly take that back and ask that engineering be discussed, unless there's someone who wants to share more about it. But I'll certainly take that back to Heather Fontanella, who works with our CTIG grant, and work to look at more explanation of how our students are using some of this high-tech equipment.
Right.
And practical equipment.
The important thing too here, it shows that we've advanced from voc ed instruments and tools to modern day laser equipment and things that can do a lot more.
And equipment that they would use in the workplace. Very nice.
And I think the key thing, because those are really good questions, and you know I look at all this. It's specifically Project Lead the Way, and it's enabling them to move into the advanced manufacturing. So I think that's all that fancy stuff that's related to that.
I did send my question in advance, but the other must be on vacation. So.
We'll certainly get the answer.
Madam President, I move that the board approve item 14.3, purchase of equipment, tools, materials, and supplies for Ignacio Valley High School's project.
Second.
Next is purchase of point-of-sale software for the Food and Nutrition Services Department from Titan School Solutions.
So I want to thank Rose Ramos and Brad Hunter and Dominic Machi for answering many of my questions regarding this purchase of the point-of-sale software. It was perhaps they can help me sort of explain this. We're using a TIPS purchasing cooperative to identify the company that we are going to contract with, which is different than our putting out RFPs separately. And The ongoing cost, because I asked about what the ongoing cost would be, is $44,000 per year compared to the $37,000 per year that we're paying now. But we won't be required to pay for a server because everything will be in the cloud, so there is a savings there. I did ask about a confidentiality agreement, and I understand that it meets the California requirements, but will also be reviewed by our legal counsel. And the capture of the benefit will be, of course, the reduction in time to process the students as they're going through the lines and to collect cash, whether it's cash or by credit card, and it will integrate with our ARIES system. So I want to thank staff for answering all my questions. Hopefully I recapped most of the salient items, and I was just excited to hear about this and appreciate the advancement that we are going through for the food services program. Thank you. I move that the board approve the purchase of point-of-sale software for the Food and Nutrition Services Department from Titan School Solutions.
Second.
Thank you, sir.
And that passes 5-0-0. And the last item is resolution 17/18-56, right? Authorization of summer contracts.
So I want to thank Mr. Jackson for responding to my questions. I had expected to see an amount not to exceed on the resolution, and the response was that the M&O will work within the budgetary amounts allocated for routine restricted maintenance, and the board allocated amounts for Measure C projects. And Mr. Jackson said that 20 to 30% of the work will be done by in-house staff. So, thank you.
Madam President, I move that the board approve item 14.5, resolution number 17/18-56, authorization to award summer contracts.
Second. Thank you. That passes 5-0-0. Do you have any communications? Nancy from district? Yes, we do. Annie Nolan?
Annie Nolan. Annie?
That didn't start in the fall.
She's
There she is.
You want to be in the crowd. Superintendent, board, audience. It's been a good year and a not so good year. It probably would have been a lot worse if I didn't have monthly meetings with personnel or Sam and stop a lot of problems before they get to be big problems. We've been talking a lot about safety in our schools. Even had a meeting with police departments and cities around us. So I thought I would like to talk about it. I offered my 31 years of experience at Olympic High School to give suggestions on safety. I went through the gang problems, get through a lot of drug problems, because that's when we were having the heydays of the gangs here in Concord, or the gangs we had. Oh, here it is here. Sorry, I had to write it at different times. How many of you have been to a funeral of a gang member or a drug dealer that have been killed, or kids just make bad choices? I'd gone to a funeral once, and I went to the cemetery afterwards. It was a bad drug deal, gone really bad. And fortunately, I guess for me and some of the other people at the cemetery, I knew the other kid that was with one that got shot and killed. And I was asked by one of the kids at the casket, telling me, go talk to him and tell him don't come to the casket. So I went and had a talk with Mike. Fortunately for me, he had been at my house for Thanksgiving when he went to Olympic. So I came, he didn't go. He said, okay, we'll stay in the parking lot. He had bodyguards with him. And then when it was all over with and we were leaving, and Mike had left, Ray came up to me and says, how many of us do you think were packing? I said, all of you? He said, we would have had a shootout right here. I said, okay, thanks for letting me know that. Anyway, so I have had a few experiences with violence in the schools. Not as far as having what they have now, but it's have. Anyway, been to the hospital, explained to kids why their friend was not alive. He was on the machine. He's not alive. You know, it's, I think it's really important. Just because we haven't had a major shootout in California doesn't mean that things don't happen, because we know they do. They have happened. They happened this year. So it doesn't need to have, should be a major shooting or things like are happening out there for us to keep our children safer. But I didn't get a call, so anyway. I also have problems with my campus supervisors picking up every job that the school seems to have, taking notes to class, handing out clothes at the gyms. When a teacher or a sub is late, they get the campus supervisor to go stay in the room, up to 90 minutes sometimes, staying in one spot all day. And that's a problem for me, because the job description is pretty clear on what their job is, because in 2015 I helped rewrite it, and it was changed the most because I would get complaints from administrators. Oh, your campus supervisors don't do this. Oh, they don't do that. Now I don't know how that's my problem, but they seem to want to make it mine. And they need to be doing what they're supposed to be doing, not doing detention, not handing out late slips. They should be out on the campus where the kids are, making sure that things are okay. And that every year I have the same problems. They use them, they think they're, I don't know, utility people, I don't know what they think they are. On the next subject, you had classified employees, not just my members, that were pretty hurt about Classified Week. I'm sure it will be remembered next year. I will not remind you again. Speaking of my members, the disrespect that is shown to some of these employees is appalling. One school wants to have monthly meetings to support each other, to lift each other up because of the way they're treated. Also, some of the students that we're bringing into this district, I've got a really bad year with my members being hurt this year. And some of them were pretty serious injuries. We're bringing in kids that we weren't equipped to handle, never had to handle, and are not trained to handle. Oh, that's right, we're not trained at all. So they're thrown into a classroom and expected to do a job. And then whenever I have somebody say, gee, can't you get these people to stay longer than 2 months? No, I can't. I would love to. And I've spoke for on my members, I have an aging group, and a lot of them are leaving and a lot of them are retiring. And I don't know where you're going to find people to do these women's jobs, because they've done fantastic jobs for you. They've been around 15, 20, 25 years. And they have served you well. We're bringing in kids at spitting, biting, the verbal abuse. It goes on and on. You know, I don't know where you're going to get, especially for the pay and the students and the injuries. Some are just awful. I just had actually today, one come and go, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? They spit all the time, always spitting on me. It got in my mouth. I said, you get to the emergency ward and you get cleaned up. Call down here. Carol helped and told them where to go and what to do. And so I got a phone call back later. when these things happen, it just doesn't affect the school or the district. She had to have blood tests. She was told you cannot have any kind of bodily fluid, whether it be sharing a spoon, whether it be sharing a drink, no sex, no nothing. Nothing can you do for 6 weeks. You got to come back, and you got to have blood tests in the panel all over again. So this just doesn't affect my members. It affects their families. So that just happened today, although I did talk to Wendy, and we're talking about getting some kind of face shields, because like I said, we are not trained for all of this. So I'm asking you to take serious consideration of your employees and how they are treating and their working conditions. I had to put in my contract, it's pretty silly that I had to negotiate this, but what I asked for is that whenever you get a new employee, I don't really care if it's mine or not, that you would, the administrators, I wanted to say that to some of them, used to, you let us talk to administrators when you hired them. We haven't done that in years. Give them a clue. But it's easier to let them know before than have to deal with it later. But when you get a new employee, like I said, I think it's ridiculous that I had to ask for this in a negotiation thing, that you at least introduce them, tell them the school rules. Not every school does the same thing. They all have different ways of doing intruders, and they have different this and different that. Nobody does the same thing around here. And I think that's really important because my members transfer a lot. So anytime you get a new employee, they should introduce themselves to my members. I'll say my members because that's what I'm talking about. Let them know what their school policy is. Let them know what your intruder deals. How do you have a safety thing if nobody knows what's going on? And just introduce yourself to them so you would at least acknowledge them that, oh, wow, you want to come and work at my school? That's really great, because some schools they don't want to go work at. So that's my speech for tonight. So I hope you take serious consideration on how the employees are treated.
Thank you, Annie. Any other district communications? That takes us to business and action items.
There is one more. There's Dorothy. Dorothy Weisenberg. You were paper clipped separately.
Good evening. I'm here to do my end of year report. I didn't get on the agenda and it was my fault. I was late. So I just want to let you guys know what we've been up to. The Community Advisory Committee has been up to this year. Again, I'm Dorothy Weisenberger and I'm the chair of this Community Advisory Committee for the Mount Diablo School District. First, I want to thank Linda and Cheryl for being a part of our CAC. I appreciate all that you do, and I want to thank Dr. Meyer, Dr. Gilly, Hillary Shen, and Denise Lambert, and for sticking around. Denise, particularly, sticking around after her son has graduated. And I don't know what I would do the last few years without her. So I just want to give a special shout out to her. Our presentations this year was, we had went over special ed programs and services and how they changed and where they're located now at what schools. We had a child find presentations, responsibilities of district children from ages of 3 to 22. We had a response to intervention presentation, resource service presentation about academic success in secondary schools, workability, and we had 5th grade family life program presentation, LCAP review, and anxiety in school and school refusal. We also had Denise Lambert and I did a presentation at the Back to School Parent Conference, which we'll be doing one again this year. We had our celebration of success, and we toured all the preschool programs through the district at CAC. We had our ADR conference, and 2 new members attended. And You Make a Difference. We had a Ledge Day, which I want to thank Natalie Ikovich. She's taken over our Ledge committee, and she did a phenomenal job. And I want to also give a shout out to Dr. Gilly for leading the way on Ledge Day in Sacramento.
And we had our summer planning meeting and we went over topics for next year and we revised our bylaws to be approved in the fall. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank the CAC for all the work they do. Like Ms. Hanson always said, they're one of the hardest working committees that we have on that serve the Board of Education and our students. So thank you.
And I always say that they're one of the functional committees, which means they're relevant and good things happen because of it.
Now we're on business and action items. 17.1, Mount Dela Unified School District 2017 to 2020 Local Control Accountability Plan, which we reviewed at our last meeting and is here for action tonight in order to be compliant with state regulation.
There's no presentation at this point, it's action. So I move that the board approve the Mount Dela Unified 2017 to 2020 Local Control Accountability Plan.
Second. This, we have a revised copy at our desk. Can we hear information about what was changed that's significant in the plan?
Yes, it'll give me an opportunity to thank Jennifer Sachs, Executive Director, Curriculum and Instruction, who has been revising as the CDE continues to change not only the template, but some of the guidance, and not to mention district staff who always have new ideas. So,
absolutely, it is never boring when it comes to the State Department and the Local Control Accountability Plan. What we tried to do with the revisions within the LCAP is underline the areas that we ended up adding, revising, or taking out. So a couple of the areas, nothing of significance has been shifted, but due to some of the revisions that you suggested, as well as some of our community members, we did include. So for example, on page 9, including information that the level 3 is per the California dashboard. So making sure folks understand about that level. We added a little information on action goal number 1, 1.1 and 1.4. We added some language with regards to librarians. We clarified certain acronyms such as VAPA, TOSA, and VCALPS to make sure that folks were understanding our education needs. We did have one budget number that was changed based on accounting from our fiscal department on page 7, and that was our total general fund budget. So we underlined that to make sure folks understood that that was a change. So really there were just kind of some simple edits, nothing too extraordinary, but I'd like just to remind everybody that this is a living, breathing document, and if we do want to make any significant changes as we move forward, we would bring it back to our advisory groups and then back to the board for information and approval, and then resubmit it to the county.
And I want to thank you for acknowledging the comments that were received and publishing those on the website.
You're welcome, and we will have a Spanish translation. If it's not up on the website right now, it will be by tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I just want to say thank you. That's a lot of hard work and very thankless.
Very good.
The LCAP deserves applause.
Okay, and now, also to be compliant with state law, the adoption of the proposed 2018 to 2019 budget.
Oh, another monumental effort here. So I would move that the board approve the adoption of the proposed 2018-19 budget.
Second.
Thank you, Rose and Nancy, and your entire department. I don't see it later.
That passes 5-0. The budget deserves Okay. Now, we have a public hearing for Senate Bill 858, excess of minimum reserve requirements. So I open the public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak can come on up to the podium. Okay. So we will close the public hearing, hearing no comments. And then we have to, I believe, make a motion in a second to acknowledge that we have a public hearing, correct?
I think you have a public hearing.
So we don't have to do anything.
Just
Okay.
amendments to the public hearing. That's it.
Next is debt management board policy as required per Senate Bill 1029. Anything to say on this one, Dr. Meyer? Or just-
Only that this now comes forward for action.
Okay. And the last one?
Madam President, I move that the board approve item 17.4, debt management board policy as required.
Second. There it is.
That's why we have capable staff.
That passes 500. Resolution 17/18-55 of the Board of Education of the Mount Diablo Unified School District, authorizing the issuance and sale of its 2018 certificates of participation not to exceed $20 million. And this is an action item. Dr. Meyer?
Just that staff recommends the approval of the resolution, and it will authorize the issuance and sale of the 2018 COP certificates of participation, not to exceed 20 million as stated.
Which had come to the board at a previous meeting.
Correct, and so information 2 weeks ago and action tonight.
Madam President, I move that the board approve item 17.5, resolution 17/18-55, regarding the authorization of the issuance and sale of its 2018 certificates of participation not to exceed $20 million.
Thank you. Second. And there were no cards on the side. Not unless my vice president sleeping on the job over there. Totally alert. And that passes 500. Okay. 17.6, amended and restated joint exercise of powers agreement between Contra Costa County and Mount Diablo Unified School District for the Oak Park Boulevard project. Now, do we have a presentation on this?
Just briefly, I just indicate to the board that representatives of the county are here tonight to answer any questions you might have concerning this proposed amended joint powers agreement. This particular agreement deals with 4 public agencies.
On the basin.
There you go.
There. Sorry. There are 4 agencies in this area dealing with the issue of this parcel at 1700 Oak Park Boulevard. We, district staff, has had a number of discussions with county staff, and at this point, this actually goes back to 1981 is the earliest date I've seen on this particular issue, and various things have happened over those three plus decades since then. At this point, the county is proposing that the district exchange its interest in a property to the property next door, and this amended JPA was drafted to reflect that. As I understand it, some board members may have questions, and Mr. Kennedy, who is the consultant that works for the county, is here tonight to attempt to answer those questions.
Thank you very much. Questions?
So yes, and thank you for coming, Mr. Kennedy. I do have some questions. And perhaps I'm the only one that may not understand the documents as they've happened over the years. And you have the greatest recollection, I'm sure. My first question, because I did not have time to go down to the recorder's office, was to ask, what did the county pay for the 8-acre portion of the 1700 Oak Park Boulevard property in 1981? Or approximately, if you remember.
Like everything out here, it's not a straightforward answer because the county had actually owned the property that the Office of Education currently sits on, just to the west of the existing library. And we swapped the interest. The Office of Education had some ability to take the Oak Park site, and we said we'd rather have that at the time, for a court complex.
Right.
So we swapped properties. So there wasn't an exchange of money, there was an exchange of properties. There was certainly a value associated with that. I don't recall exactly what that was back in 1981.
But we didn't own the property where the county Office of Education is currently located. I don't think, did we?
You did not, but the county did.
Right. And now I'm even more confused because I show that we built the Oak Park Elementary School facility in 1952 and it was closed in 1976.
Right.
So in 1981, I had understood that the county purchased the 8 acres that where the elementary school building was from Mount Diablo School District.
It purchased via a swap of properties.
Okay. I don't know what property we gained. Would it have been some property somewhere else in the district?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, I'll move on then. The JPA agreement in 2006 describes the 2 properties, the 8 acres that the county now owns and Mount Diablo's 2 acres as the project in this particular JPA. And the county has an easement on our 2 acres. What is that easement specific to? Is it underground pipes? I don't believe there's anything electrical out there. What is the county's easement on our 2 acres?
It's described relatively generally, but it was largely for access to the adjacent parcel. You may recall there was discussion in Pleasant Hill back in the 80s about putting in a connector roadway from Oak Park Boulevard to Cleveland.
Right.
And while that ultimately never happened, that corridor was the one that was identified for that connecting drive. So from the standpoint of providing access to the remaining 8 acres that the county owned, we reserved out an easement over your 2 acres.
Okay, thank you. No one has been able to explain that part particularly, so thank you very much. In the 2006 JPA, I didn't locate a mention of the Mount Diablo School District's obligation to pay a share of the building abatement and demolition costs for the elementary school buildings. Can you tell me where that was in that JPA agreement?
There was a description of net proceeds that would be realized from the sale of the property, and included in the items that will be netted from the gross sales price would be county costs associated with the sale, title costs, appraisals, all of that kind of stuff, and the demolition of the Oak Park Elementary School buildings.
I found it interesting that it's not specifically called out in the 2006 JPA, but it is specifically, it's added to the 2018. So was that an oversight that it wasn't mentioned in 2006?
Well, in 2006, at that juncture, we had not made the decision of whether to demolish the improvement or not. Again, you may have the recollection that I do. After the JPA was formed, we began to see a lot of the uses, nonprofit uses and whatnot, that had been occupying the former elementary school, began to vacate. The building became an attractive nuisance, vandalism on a regular basis, and we made a decision to demolish the building after that agreement had been entered into.
Do you recall what year it was, the building was abated? I couldn't remember, and I couldn't find newspaper clipping.
2008, I believe.
Oh, sounds about right. In the 2006 agreement, it says that each party will pay CEQA costs, and it mentions your 8 acres and Mount Diablo's 2 acres. But the agreement talks about Mount Diablo having 10%. Can you explain what the CEQA costs were expected to be in 2006, or how that CEQA would be done? Because it said each of us would do separate CEQAs.
Well, that explicitly related to the transfers of ultimately of the properties. So there's a requirement under state law to follow the California Environmental Quality Act and go through that procedure. The district would be responsible for their portion of the property, the 2 acres, and the county would have been responsible for the 8 acres.
So that would have been, we would have been responsible for 20%, say, of the CEQA costs based on the 2 acres compared to 10 acres.
That's
total. Okay. And so it does, our cost wouldn't have been the 10% that's described in that particular document.
No, the 10% related to the value of the school district's interest in the 2 acres. Since it was encumbered with the easement to the county, we both agreed to commission an appraisal and ask the question, what is the value of the easement interest? And the appraisal came back and said the value of the easement interest is 10% of the value of the property. The value of the fee is 10% of the total 10 acres, and that became the percentage that got embedded in the JPA agreement.
I asked that question because someone said if the total was 10 acres and you had 2, why didn't you receive 20%? So it's a fair question. In the 2006 JPA, there's an Exhibit C that's attached to it. Is all or part or just of that exhibit still valid?
My recollection, Exhibit C is the agreement that we would enter into with a buyer of the property. And it's still part of the existing agreement. It is not contemplated to be part of this subsequent agreement, but we could certainly do that if that's desired. It was a form of an agreement that would be entered into with the buyer of the property. It's basically an option.
So if we swap the properties, that Exhibit C is no longer valid, or do we have to look at that?
Well, it's not relevant to the district's interest because you would not be a title owner of the property that would be being sold for monetary value. the county owns in its entirety 1750 Oak Park Boulevard.
Right.
And so we would, what we have offered is that we would transfer the fundamental principle of giving the school district 10% of the value of the revenue generating use on the in the area to the property that the county owns in its entirety. So the option with the school district as a party isn't relevant, but we would enter into a purchase and sale, an option agreement when we ultimately sell it.
So the reason I asked that question, and I don't mean for it to be a trick question, was that in Exhibit C, there is a specific reference to excluding county staff time in the calculations for the 90% and 10%. And in the 2018 proposed agreement, county staff time is added to the document as part of the cost. So I'm presuming this means county costs from the 2006 date. Is that correct?
We have kept records since 2006 when the original JPA agreement was entered into, and we could include those in the definition of project costs if the amended agreement is adopted. One of the things that we had heard about this concern earlier this evening in a consultation with our project manager, who is good for her. She's at a conference in Canada, but we did commandeer some of her time. We're willing to exclude from project costs the cost of demolition of the Oak Park Elementary School, which was roughly $300,000 back in 2007, 2008.
So thank you for sharing that with us. Now in the 2018 JPA, I had to do this sequentially so I could try to understand it. What are the entitlements that the county must obtain for the city for this land transfer to occur?
1750 Oak Park Boulevard, it needs the entire litany of planning approvals. It currently has a general plan land use designation that reflects its use. It's a public use, a library, and so it will need a general plan amendment. It would need a rezoning, planned unit development. It would need a subdivision, testing tentative map, design review, perhaps a lot line adjustment or two, and secret clearance.
And it does describe that now the secret will be considered, will be one for all 15 acres versus 10 acres and 5 acres. But the land use will be different for both pieces of property. How does the land use for the 10 acres change, I guess? Was that designated as housing by the city?
The 10 acres had a mixed-use general plan land use designation that was very broad. It would permit residential uses, office uses, commercial uses, and public uses, or a mixture of all of those uses on one site. They do not need a general plan amendment or the other land use approvals that the county would need to do development on 1750. The city itself is actually exempt from its own ordinances, so it doesn't need planning approvals for the library. And the park district would require either a use permit or would be enabled by a specific plan that is being prepared for the entire 15 acres in order to create some design guidelines and development standards that would be uniformly applied across 3 properties where it was appropriate and relevant.
So will the 3 agencies that finally end up with the property be responsible for the cost of the CEQA?
Yes, we have a cost-sharing agreement that is embedded in a memorandum of understanding that is, among other things, pending, awaiting the outcome of this process, that allocates cost shares for CEQA, 50% to the county, 30% to the city, and 20% to the park district.
Mrs. Mayo and Madam President, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So first I want to say thank you to Mrs. Mayo for her diligence and her knowledge, and thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Both of you are vastly more knowledgeable about this topic than I am, and I think Mrs. Mayo has raised some very good questions, and so I would just ask, is this an item that we would want to have return at a later date after we have a chance to have your questions more fully answered, or would you prefer for us to work through this evening?
That's a question for the entire board.
Our council wants to forbid.
I don't know. I'm gonna turn this on. I'm not on? Yes, I'm.
Yeah.
Okay. The county came to us and indicated that the project, and with all its moving parts, because there are a lot of moving parts, is moving forward fairly rapidly now and is asking for a vote tonight. To be perfectly candid with you, receiving the answers to the questions in the memo we received tonight, I think I'm comfortable with what the county is doing. So they requested it to be on the night for action, and I would recommend it to you.
And I feel like we're getting answers to our questions. If you have more, go ahead, but so far I haven't heard a question that we have to wait for the answer. Mr. Kennedy's so far been able to answer them, so do you have more? If you do, go right ahead.
So by my estimation, the school district's expense will maybe increase for the CEQA because it says that we will bear 10% of the cost of the CEQA, of the county's cost for CEQA.
You're not a part of the direct cost share, but through that netting process, I think that's a fair assessment that you are incurring a portion of those costs. And just to put a number to it, the county share is roughly $115,000 for the CEQA.
Mm-hmm.
So 10% of that would be $11,500, $12,000.
And I know my questions are tedious, and I apologize to the board and to the audience. My goal is to assure that the district's interests are served in obtaining what the district is owed for the properties. It's not to say that I would have loved if the property had sold for $25 million, like it was estimated to in 2006. And I know that this has been an arduous journey for the county. What I wanted to make sure was that everyone understood that under the definition for the costs, the costs for the county consultant fees are added, the county staff costs are added, the demolition and abatement costs for the Oak Park building and the 3 library buildings are added. And then, of course, in my view, there is an increase in the CEQA expenses for the district. Does that sound accurate?
Well, the what is included in the netting process is more expansive than what was in the prior agreement. That being said, we've already indicated that we're willing to pull out the costs associated with demolition of the Oak Park school back in 2008, roughly $300,000. In addition, one of the things that we have come to realize about the 10-acre property is that it's an incredibly challenged site from the standpoint of the regulatory process that exists for land development in California generally and in Pleasant Hill. Almost the entirety of the school district's 2 acres is the creek or the creek setback. Standing by itself has almost no value as a marketable commodity. It has value in association with the adjacent 8 acres. A portion of 1700 Oak Park is also in the flood zone. And what we've discerned in the planning studies that have been done ramping up to the point where we're at today is that taking care of those flooding issues is an extremely expensive proposition. Not so much related to what you do on the property, but because you can simply raise the elevations and take it out of the flood zone. But what that would have the effect of doing is forcing the water that is otherwise coming down through the watershed back up into the watershed and flooding properties basically on the south side of Oak Park Boulevard. And we obviously can't have that happen. And the solutions to solve for that were very, very expensive. An engineer will tell you, yeah, we can do that. But at what cost? It was that set of circumstances that simply said, there's probably a more optimal set of uses that could go on 1700 Oak Park that aren't as sensitive to the setting that we have. And particularly the Park District use, since they don't have any structures, they can go into the floodplain and not have to really change elevations all that much. The city and their library can effectively design around the limitations that the floodplain brings to it and stay away from the creek. So those 2 uses seem to be a much better fit than a set of residential uses that would generate revenue for the county and for the district.
So just so that everyone understands, originally the county purchased the property for a courthouse, and that went away. And then, because I remember all of the discussions around that, I wasn't involved in that at that time. I was too young. Then it was for consideration for a market like Safeway, I believe. They were major retail property. And then the last one was a development of some sort. The estimate was anywhere from 60 to 90 homes or whatever on the property, which of course was upsetting to some members of my community in the south of Pleasant Hill. So I appreciate the information that there is recognition of the payments that were made as down deposits from the Summerhill payments. They subsequently abandoned it, so there was a $400,000 payment to the county, and you're acknowledging that we would not have to help pay for the raising of the buildings on the Oak Park Elementary School. But you are indicating, because I haven't had time to see the document, we were in closed session when it was transmitted, you are indicating that we would share 10% of the cost to raise the buildings on the Oak Park Library, which is $1,750, which includes 3 buildings or 2.5 buildings maybe, and that may be somewhat expensive because there's probably asbestos and or lead in those buildings because of the age of them.
Oh, yeah.
Right. My one concern when we would have, if the board approves this, is that it indicates that Mount Diablo won't be entitled to any proceeds from the sale of the portion of the 10-acre parcel, and that we would, in return, we're giving up our interest in 2 acres, but we have no interest in the 5-acre parcel. We only get a 10% promise, so to speak. And tell me why I should be comfortable with that, because I'm a person that likes to hold on to real estate.
Well, from the county's perspective, we could have made the decision that said the 2 acres isn't developable, we're simply going to abandon it and not include it in any subsequent transaction. We did not feel that that was fair to the school district. You've been our partner for over 10 years and had certain expectations when you entered into the original agreement in good faith. And we're honoring that fundamental principle. 10% of the net proceeds would go to the school district, despite the fact that you don't have a real estate or fee title interest in 1750 Oak Park. It's consistent with the original agreement. It's fair to both parties, and we're willing to abide by that.
I have a couple comments on that particular issue that Ms. Andrus and I, Ms. Andrus is from the county counsel's office. In these situations, and I'll just say this, because I said this to a lot of boards that are represented, when you're dealing with another public agency, you assume good faith, and you assume we'll all be here, these 2 agencies will be here long after we're all gone. And in my dealings with the county, and with this county and a number of other counties, it's always been a situation where, you know, if this was a commercial real estate transaction, we would have a lot more bells and whistles and a lot more documents and a lot more things to solidify the arrangement. When public agencies deal together, it's not so much, I guess the best word to use would be streamlined. But in this particular case, what's very interesting to me is the fact that you are in a joint powers agency with the county. In other words, you are an agency together.
Right.
You are in fact the county. The county is in fact you. So it's difficult for me to see, as a lawyer, as a public lawyer, that there would be a problem enforcing your interest, simply because you are considered part of the agency. And if we had to, certainly we could, lawyers, you know, we can go to court and confirm that, and the court would enforce that. But I think my review of the documents is such that this has been a long, strange trip, to quote from one of my favorite bands. And Mr. Kennedy certainly exudes the knowledge of that. And I think at this point, as the county has said, they want to continue the agreement in good faith. My suggestion to the district is you also continue the agreement in good faith. And as a lawyer, I'll tell you, it's enforceable. I mean, if we did something, we wouldn't have the property.
3 more questions.
But I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate that. And I apologize for being tedious here.
These are all good questions, by the way.
They are.
So there is a clause in here that says, should the county decide not to sell the 5-acre parcel or proceed with the project, then the new JPA is void. Is that correct? If I understood it correctly. So we would not receive benefit from our 10% of interest if the county chooses not to sell the property.
Well, there wouldn't be any proceeds, obviously,
Right.
to share. But what that clause was trying to get at is that we opted to not sell 1750 as a revenue generating asset, rather to retain the existing property, 1700, and work with that. So it's possible that for whatever reason, we could change direction and proceed in on a different course, and basically going back to recognizing 1700 as the real estate asset.
Okay.
Can I add to that answer?
We don't think that that will play out.
If I could just add to that answer. I'll
This
let-
is Kate Andrews from the county council's office. Kate, speak in the mic. As I'm learning, we have to speak into the microphone.
I just would like to add that the purpose of that was just to say, if this complicated deal with all three agencies doesn't come together, we'll just go back to what we had before. We'll just erase the amended and restated JPA and go back to the 2006 agreement.
But then there's this another, I had presumed that the deciding factor for this voiding of the 2018 JPA was number 15, because it says if the transfer of the 10-acre property does not occur, this shall be null and void. It doesn't say that in number 7, that's, well, I have to look at the language, I have to pull it up, that it says that the county decides not to sell the 5-acre parcel. So I was confused by those two.
Well,
How I clearly understand number 15, but I was concerned that if the transfer happens, I felt that number 7 said you were not obligated to sell the 1750 Oak Park Boulevard property, and the district would not realize any benefit.
Mr. Schenke, I think, very accurately described our setting, where we've got 3 public agencies that have an interest in some portion of it, and far be it from us at the administrative level to remove the discretion that the elected officials of those respective agencies have. And at this juncture, as I stand before you tonight, the City Council for Pleasant Hill, the Board of Directors of the Pleasant Hill Recreation and Park District, and the County Board of Supervisors have not yet taken action on a memorandum of understanding that would not only characterizes all of the things that are going to happen, including the exchange and sales, transfers of property, but we're scheduled to do that in July. Once that happens, I think the ship has sailed by all 3 parties, and we won't have the ambiguity that is associated with the elected officials for the respective agencies not having yet taken action.
So I have 2 questions, and then I'll step aside here. The map, as provided, does not show the street Monticello, which travels from Oak Park Boulevard to Santa Barbara. Per this JPA with the other agencies, is it guaranteed anywhere that that road will continue in its existence? Or will that road, can you share at this point in time whether that road will be eliminated and the access to the 1750 Oak Park Boulevard would be perhaps from Santa Barbara Road? Because there was information in one document I saw that said that access would be eliminated on the Oak Park side.
The joint planning that has gone on to date, that has not yet surfaced in terms of either land use planning applications or documents, all show a new Monticello Avenue in the corridor that it currently sits in. And plus, we will replace the existing traffic signal out at Oak Park Boulevard and do a variety of other changes to optimize the circulation system, both getting to the school district property and then into the school district property. Access to the development on 1750 would be off of Monticello. In discussions with the planning staff in Pleasant Hill, they've agreed that having direct access to Oak Park Boulevard from the residential area would not be a good idea. They have also suggested that having a direct connection to Santa Barbara is probably not necessary. The only party that might weigh in with a different opinion on that could be the fire district. And at this juncture, we have met with the fire district, and they seem to be open to that.
And so my final question was that how will the city of Pleasant Hill and the Park District be compensating the county for the property?
Consistent with what's in the JPA agreement, where we're asking that the school district do a no-cost conveyance. The county is conveying its 4 acres to the city and the 4 acres to the Park District at no cost.
At no cost.
Well, the Park Districts, let me amend that. The existing agreement with the Park District for 1750 had a $3 million cost associated with that. That $3 million that was agreed to for 1750, similar to the agreement with you, transfers over to the northern portion of 1700. So they would pay the county $3 million.
And so the city's interest of 5 acres for the library was always intended to be at no cost then?
Yes.
I did not understand that, so that's new information.
And the principle that underlies that is that while the city didn't own the property that the current library sits on, it was viewed to be an asset of the library system, and if it's not going to be used for the library, the value associated with that should show up somewhere else, and it shows up across the street.
Thank you for your questions.
I just wanted to say it was an interesting historical walk, and you're really well versed on the history. Mrs. Mayo has lived it, and you've lived it as well, so I appreciated all that information. I think you have done a great job of providing information that's practical and to the point. And our 2 acres sits as a finger in a flood zone, and on its own is not useful, but as part of a project with these other agencies, I think makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate also the willingness to compensate and to have that kind of respectful partnership with the school district. So I think you have really, to me, satisfied those, by answering those questions, really brought forward a lot of good information. And I think what you've said makes perfect sense. So I'm quite satisfied at this point that this is a good faith relationship and kind of win-win. So thank you for taking that time.
Well, you're welcome. We appreciate the opportunity. I will tell you the level of excitement on the part of both the Park District and the city to get on with their initiatives is pretty ripe.
I had heard originally that there was a simple resolution that you could have taken, that could have been approved by the Board of Supervisors, and that did not occur. I'm wondering why a resolution wasn't presented to the Board of Supervisors to make the transfer, buy us out, our interest out, and then make the transfer to the 2 agencies by the county.
Well, if you're referring to the status of the current agreements, it's really been negotiating the details of this memorandum of understanding. And there have been lots of issues. All of the business terms have been totally agreed to. We turned it over to the lawyers. The lawyers have some issues of their own that are not germane to the business deal, and that's been the factor that's delayed us, but we're right now on a program where we would take to our respective bodies.
So
I think July 17th, 19th, and 24th.
So we're the first domino to fall.
You're an important
Let's
element.
say it that way.
We're the leaders.
This has been going on for several years. I've been on the board 8 years now. It's been going on almost half of my years. I'm at that stage of, this is great. We're moving forward. We're bringing it to closure. I think it's a win-win.
Want to make a motion?
I don't see it as, I would love to make a motion. Madam President, I move that the board approve the amended and restated joint exercise of powers agreement between Contra Costa County and Mount Diablo Unified School District for the Oak Park Boulevard project. And I'm not doing this just to move it along. I do believe that it is reasonable what we have been discussing here and what's been proposed.
Madam President, if I might,
Yes.
because of the conversation tonight, I would ask that Ms. Hanson amend her motion to include the subtraction of $300,000 of demolition costs.
That's why you're here, Mr. Shimke.
Just as an addition.
I amend my motion as presented by Mr. Shimke.
Was there anything else in the document that I didn't have time to review? It
No,
was
I-
just that 300,000.
Tonight, the office and the accounting will reflect in the net proceed calculation. Ms. Anderson, I will finish that up.
Do I have a second?
Is that it then?
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. It was like being a redevelopment again, Mr. Chairman. We're a long time we've worked on redevelopment in Bay Point.
Deborah, excuse me, your president and I go way back in Bay Point.
So I still have some reservations and further questions that I didn't ask. I do support the advancement of the project and the library and the development of the park area next to our football field and facilities. But there are some other things that I would have liked to see amended. I understand that the conversation wasn't was tiresome for you guys, and that I would have made some other amendments. So I'm not going to vote in favor of this agreement.
And I would say that I thank you for your questions. It was history I didn't know, and I thank Mr. Kennedy for his knowledgeable answers, and I think that's why we're here. And we have a 4-1-0 vote. It didn't show, well, it showed up on the bottom.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, and we're more than happy to continue flushing out details with you guys.
This was in memory of Marilyn Watson.
Okay, that's a good name.
All right. Next item is for information. Review potential new GO bond funding, and we have a speaker card from John Ferrante.
Good evening. I have some concerns with the GO bond moving forward. The presentation that was given stated that the polling was done using telephone. The implication was landlines. Guess what? My kids and all their friends, and I know a lot of their friends, they don't have landlines. They don't have anything to do with land anything. It's all done with their cell phones or their iPads. So you left off 2 voting generations. along that very same line, I would like to know what is the feeling of the Northgate community. Somehow I don't think it's going to be favorable. Also, I'd like to know the feeling of the Bay Point community. How do they feel about this? The Clayton community. Somehow I don't think they're going to be too terribly friendly with this one. And then of course there's the outlying communities that border all of these feeder patterns. What are their feelings? Having just the one overall view where you looked at Central Concord and a bunch of old people, to put it at the best I can, I don't think is indicative of the feeling of the district overall. You got to get those cell phone people involved. My bigger concern is timing. I was the campaign co-chair for 2002 Measure C. I put in a whole lot of work in 2010 Measure C to get those things on the ballot. In both cases, we spent over 6 months, I think it was closer to 9 months, getting this thing onto the ballot. We put in a lot of time. Linda, you put in a whole lot of time with us on the 2002 bond. If this thing goes on the ballot in November, you back off 9 months, you're looking at February. February's long in the past. We're out of time. And it's, you have to get your people together. You have to do at least 2, if not 3 pollings. You have to get a committee together to line up spending. The district has to get a committee together to prioritize what needs to be done. We're working on that one, obviously, because we have that, I can't remember the name of the company coming on board to do the site-by-site review, but they're not going to be done until, what, August? So we can put together a list in August, which gives you September to get something together, because you have to have your proposition to the county to be put into the pamphlet and put on the ballot, what is it, 6, 8 weeks in advance? You don't have that time. It's not there. I'm concerned about that timing. Just, you have to notify the people. You have to do a lot of publicity. I don't remember how many groups I ended up talking to, trying to get them on board. PTAs, PFCs, teacher groups, principal groups. That all takes time. And right now, I'm not seeing where that time exists. So, put in a lot of thought on this, if you would. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a presentation on this? We do.
Tonight we have a presentation for information, and this is on the possibility of a general obligation bond. And it will be done by Dale Scott, who is our financial advisor. So if Dale could please come. Welcome.
Good evening. Is the presentation going to go up here or? Okay, well, everybody has copies. This will be very brief. I really wanted to just give you some background of all the work that has been done over the past 6 months to a year, and tell you what now has to happen in the next month or so if you are going to proceed. If you can look at slide 2. If you can go to slide 2. There we go. Just as background, obviously general obligation bonds are built on the assessed valuation projections. Over the past 4 years, your assessed value, 5 years, your assessed valuation has grown on average 6.4% per year. Regardless of that, the underlying numbers that we're going to be sharing with you tonight that we have used throughout this entire exercise, we're assuming only a 5% growth rate for the next 3 years and then 3.5% thereafter. The understanding being that even though it's been great having 6.4%, that's probably not going to last forever. If I can go to slide 3, what slide 3 shows is the assessed valuation, is the tax rate projections of the existing, 2 existing bonds, the 2010 election and the 2012 election. As you can see, right now, we're projecting that tax rates are going to stabilize at about $80 per $100,000 of assessed valuation. Again, these are the two currently outstanding bonds. In addition to that, over the next 10 years, 8 years, there are going to be numerous opportunities to be able to refinance these bonds and lower that tax rate more. And these are the dates when these come on with their availability to refinance. So 4 or 5 very large potential to bring that tax rate down lower. But for now, we're going to assume that doesn't occur in case interest rates go up. I just wanted to point that out. And then if we go to slide 4, what has been discussed with the board on numerous occasions is going out to the voters and asking for a marginal tax increase of $14. That is $14 above what is currently being paid. And that would generate approximately $150 million, as you can see in this slide. Now, typically, the way these bonds are put together is they are amortized over a 20 to 25 year period, which you can see the blue in this example. And that would result in $150 million of principal and $120 million of interest. But turning to slide 5, what we've done and also described a couple times with the board is if we can compress that amortization schedule and put it out over about 15 years instead, 15 to 18 years, we could shave a good $50 million of savings off of the cost tag, off the price tag. So that's the current thinking, is to try to compress that down, unlike the traditional 25 to 30 year bonds. And then finally on page 6, the events that have to occur in order to get on the ballot are laid out. Number 1, you have the resolution, draft resolution in front of you for information tonight. Over the course of the next few weeks, that has to be fleshed out with ballot language, finish off the tax rate statement, finish off the project list, which we're working with staff on, and we have the assistance of the legal counsel and TVWB. The date at which it has to be filed, that is the date by which it has to be passed and filed with the county, is August 10th. So time between now and August 10th, if you do want to get on the November ballot, the board would have to take action to pass that resolution and then file it with the county. And then in August, there would also be the ability to file an argument in favor. If there is an argument in opposition, then a rebuttal to that argument, et cetera, and then election day, November 6th of 2010. So I wanted to give just a brief background of a number of the items that we've discussed over the past 6 months to a year, try to distill them down. Obviously, the amount and the tax rate and the final project list is up to the board, but these are the general numbers that we've been working with. And I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
I was just wondering if you could respond a little bit to the timing concerns that were raised and the importance of getting it on the November ballot.
Well, let's take the timing of the election first. Yes, it's always better to have more time, obviously. And the more time you have, the better, to a certain extent. Although I will say that campaigns can also have too much time. There's just too much time and people the energy just can't keep it going. So by the design, you want to have some amount of compression in it. But if you decided to not get on the November ballot, then the next available date to bring this item before the voters would be in the special presidential primary, which is going to be in March of 2020. So really you're talking about delaying additional funding for approximately 2 years. So you have to offset that. Would it be nice to have more time? Now, you're working with a firm, I think they could give you a better answer in terms of the overall politics, but there has been a fair amount of work, I believe, that's been done in outreach. In addition, it's a different election. It's a different election that's coming up than it was in 2010. And I think there's going to be a stronger turnout in this gubernatorial election than there has been in the past, just because of the nature of what we're going through as a nation. And that certainly happened in the gubernatorial primary where turnout was much stronger. So higher turnout helps you and lessens the amount of time and effort you have to do in generating interest to vote.
Why do you, is there historical evidence that higher turnout helps you? Because sometimes it means you just have a larger number of uninformed voters voting, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, there is, so we have tracked every election, every school district and college district bond election since 2001. And without a doubt, the strongest probability of winning correlates to the highest turnout. Now, there are circumstances that's not the case, but generally, presidential elections strongest, gubernatorial elections second, primaries third, everything else in the center.
Just wanted to follow up because Mr. Ferrani's mentioned it a couple of times on the outreach and gathering information and opinions from people. And what you brought forward the last time you were here was kind of a strong support for, a kind of new respect for the district and support. That his points that I'd just be curious about were the age groups, the communities. Do we really feel we have representation that we can rely on, or is it possible that groups are missed or we haven't reached out fully? And it's a kind of a crapshoot because you're picking a percentage, but maybe just your thoughts on that issue.
Well, excuse me, there's no doubt that the quality of survey research has deteriorated over the last 10 years, the last 15 years, and that's just because people don't answer the telephone. I do believe cell phones were in this survey. I'd have to go back and look. But cell phones are complicated also because they're expensive. By law, you can't put an auto dialer on a cell phone. So you have to balance that off, the cost of just having those people represent. The survey was not large enough, as I recall, in terms of the number of people to break it down. I mean, you could go back and break it down by zip code or voting area, but there really weren't enough people in that to break it down in those communities. But anybody that was a registered voter, probable voter, within the boundaries was part of that pool. We didn't differentiate between these people are in and these people are not. Would it be nice to, excuse me, would it be nice to have additional polls? Yes, it would be nice, but it would be expensive.
Would it also not hold that older voters who do have landlines who may participate are actually the same hardcore voters who turn out no matter what, and so typically the younger voters would be more inclined to favor something like this?
I would agree with that.
And wasn't there a demographic number for each age category and gender, that sort of thing?
Yes,
that was included in the poll.
Correct. It tries to match the broad demographics of the voting population. Not to say it's perfect, but it tries to match that. And not to say that opinions of younger voters are not important, but they don't make up a great deal of the turnout in a gubernatorial election. But they were still surveyed.
So a constituent asked me this particular question. What do we think will affect the November turnout in addition to all of the politics and things that are going on? The question this individual brought up was the 2018 tax plan limits deductions for state and local taxes, thus blunting one advantage point of increasing local tax rates. Do you think that this will play into it?
I mean, with a certain voter, yes, but that's, if you're asking about turnout, and yes, I don't think that's going to happen. I haven't seen in the June ballot that was had any impact that I could discern. I think turning to what will be a factor in the November election, frankly, turning to the political side, is the fact that there's actually going to be a governor's race between a Republican and a Democrat. And I think that will increase turnout on both sides of the aisle. But I think that's going to make it a real race and a lot more interest coming to the polls. If it were two Democrats, I mean, 4 years ago we had we didn't have two Democrats, but we had somebody that wasn't well known, and it was a bit of a yawner, and it was the worst turnout that we'd ever had in the governor's race. So I think that's what's really going to get people to the polls, is what's at the top of the ballot.
So you don't think that not being able to itemize the deduction for local taxes will make much of a difference in the
It'll make some of the difference, I just don't think it's going to make a large difference. I just don't think it's on most people's radar.
So what is the cost estimate of moving forward with this?
The cost of the district will be the cost that is charged by the county to put it on the ballot. But since it's a gubernatorial election, that will be shared among all the districts. And so I'm not going to say it's like de minimis, but it'll be not a large sum compared to if you were on the ballot by yourself. Besides that, there would be no additional expenses except those associated with selling the bonds if it were successful.
Because I share the concerns about the timeline. I just started a teen garden program today that goes the whole month of July, and before you know it, it's going to be over, and then we're into August. So I don't know. That bothers me, the time frame, a lot.
Just another question here on the two. You have the compressed rate, which one of the things we ran into, I know because I wasn't on the school board yet when Measure C 2010 was, that was right, I got on the board right after that. There were concerns immediately about the funding, and you know the history of that we were paying astronomical interest for decades. People who weren't even born yet were going to be paying these. How is this conveyed? We have two options, and obviously one saves according to your chart, over 52 million in interest. How is that? We choose an option, correct? Or is this just, how is this communicated to voters? Because one of the concerns, one of the exposés that came forward in 2010 was really through the local paper blasting out the astronomical interest rate for generations. So how is this best conveyed or communicated?
This structure that you see on page 5 will then be interpreted in what's called a tax rate statement, which will be part of the resolution. And certain numbers will be provided to the voters in the sample ballot, including what the total cost, principal, and interest will be. And that's the way it's going to be, that's the best way it's conveyed. And then in any other information that the district sends out to voters, you're going to want to tell them this is what the cost is going to be. So I think it's a strong argument compared to what other districts have done.
But just to clarify that, we would not be able to represent that there's $52 million in taxpayer savings because that's...
No, that would not be accurate. Just compared to what a typical, just for the purposes of this explanation, but not in terms of discussing it with the public. Right.
I'm looking at how you convey a kind of compression because of the 2010 bond, that it was 40 years or something of incredible exponential interest. How you convey that to people that this is a smarter package than what we did in 2010. So that was what I was looking for, how that, not the exact figure, you can't ever pin that down.
Any other questions? It's just information tonight. It is, I guess, but I mean, August, it's going to be August. No, not just
the question that comes to my mind, pending that before a decision in August, do we need to encourage community members to step forward to serve on a campaign committee? What sort of things can we do between now and then with the understanding that the decision will be made in August?
Well, not necessarily in August if we did decide to have a special meeting, and I know we are meeting in July. But I would say that so much of this is an order of operations. So, for example, we bring something forward to the board in April, May, March, April, as we did with initial conversations, and then bringing it back for you today for information. But there have been conversations about plotting out the timeline. So, for example, we wanted to have it come to you first before we started to go out and send letters or send information or invite people anywhere. So there is a group that has been working, starting with actions tomorrow, as far as letters and invitations, and are outlining the steps that need to occur. And I would also say I agree. The timeline, it would be much better to have more time, but I want to point out as well that there has been much work in the last 2 years where we have had numerous board workshops. We have had an outlining of the assessed need, great need, and a continued project list that does not have funding to go with it. And the sampling or the poll, I agree with Mr. Lawrence. That was my thought, that when you have people on cell phones, that it is kind of a demographic that is starting to vote more and more, and who do not have landlines, who are maybe recently out of schools that needed repair. So you have an entire new group there. So as far as timeline, what I've asked the team to do is to outline the actions that have occurred, so you all can see these are the things and these are the conversations over the last 2 years that I've had to assess the need of our campus. I think the facilities plan actually will have a positive timing, in that if it's completed right, before we are going forward. But there are certainly things that stand out that we know we need prior to the completion of the facilities plan, and we can work with that group to give us some ideas about what they have recommended are important things to start with. But our team has been looking at this for years. They know that there's a great need as far as our buildings, and they're often the things you hear about in the other bonds. They are the same things that Mount Diablo needs. So that would be my answer to the question of timing. There have been people who've been gathering information on it. There has not been the active campaign, because that is a separate entity from the district. So we've had people who have been building up confidence, if you will, in what we're doing, assessing the need of where we need work, but also looking at how to communicate that first to our staff and our own people who are going to be the messengers, but also talking about where the problems are. We heard tonight, what about this area? What about this area? That will be a good start as well. As we talk to many of the people who are not necessarily the loudest voices in those communities, but parents, they have very much said that they're looking for field improvements or classroom improvements or modernization. So there are a lot of audiences and a lot of pieces moving. I agree this, I'll keep my politics shut, but I believe it will be a big election, and I'll just stop there.
I just want to leave you with one last observation, which is in 20 years of doing this and working with school districts and college districts in forums just like this, in meetings just like this, I've never once had a person stand up and say, or a board member say, this is the perfect time. No one has ever said that. It's always not the right time. And so you just have to take that into consideration. Are you ready? Are you as ready as you want to be? Probably not, but are you ready? And the opposite, can you afford to wait?
Working smarter in a shorter period of time.
And I have a question for Dale, if I could. Worst case, what have you seen with districts who have gone out? Because publicity from going out this time, does it help in the next round, or does it hurt? If we were to go out and not win and then say, okay, we're coming back again.
No, that's fairly consistent. You almost have to. If you're going out to voters and saying, listen, this is something we really need. This is something that is critical to this district, and you get 54%. Well, then you're not going to get it stop becoming critical. I mean, you have to then say it's still critical in the next election, and we're going to have to get back on the ballot. So I see no downside to that. I only see downside with those districts that pull back, and then 4 years later they have to start public voting.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next, annual contract with Curriculum Associates for iReady K-8 and high school software licenses for the 2018-19 school year.
I see Ms. Ortland has been here, but I will share just that we are very proud of the work that we have done with iReady. We've had it for 4 years. The first year was a pilot at select schools. And it does the formative assessment, so schools can look and see how close they're approximating the California standards. I learned in the conversation that we do also use it in high school, so for those who are in need, at a lower level, that we can also assess them if they're between K through 8 level. And one thing that we found when we first looked at it, it is highly correlated to the CAS, which is the summative test that we take. And it's brought forward to you today because, as you can see, it's a big ticket item. It's $710,000. But it's changed, up or down? Oh, down, good. Okay, so it's still a big ticket item. And so we wanted you to have it before you to look at. I would say the first pilot, what we learned from the first 2 years was that there was a concern about over testing. And so we have scaled back the number of benchmarks. And so now have fewer, and Shannon has been working with principals and teachers on how to use that data to better teach. Do you have anything you want to add? I think she does.
I just wanted to be transparent on the fiscal impact was it was incorrect. So the actual quote that's attached to the item is the 690,000 is the accurate quote.
And any feedback that you've heard regarding the testing?
It does take quite a bit of time to do the diagnostic. But the diagnostic actually sets the instructional path for the students and closes the gaps with reading and math. So it does take time, but overall it does. The growth rate of students actually accelerates over a year's growth for certain students.
Yeah. In California, are there any alternatives in terms of other companies or programs that other school districts are using?
There are competitors, of course, specifically in math. Any company that is a competitor, we look at the research attached to the students that progress on the software. A lot of companies claim that they do have that student progress. Yes. You just have to look closely.
From a pricing standpoint, where does iReady kind of fit in the mix of alternatives?
It's priced a little bit different. iReady, you purchase the diagnostic is one price. You add the instructional pathway is an additional. So we buy K-8, the comprehensive package, and then in high school we buy the diagnostic, and then if students qualify for the instructional pathway, if they are performing at kindergarten through 8th grade level, we then purchase the instructional licenses.
And those licenses, can you share about the instructional pathway?
Sure. So based on the diagnostic in reading and math, students, it's an adaptive assessment, so it can adapt all the way down to kindergarten in phonics, concepts about print, and based on students' indication on the diagnostic, it sets an instructional pathway in the different domains of either reading or ELA and math.
So it gives them lessons on the computer according to what they tested.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, I know Shannon's the type to give it a lot of study and thought, and if we're on it for 4 years, then I trust that. I would move that the board approve the annual contract with Curriculum Associates for iReady K-8 high school software licenses.
Second. Thank you. That passes 500. Purchase of supplemental materials for Spanish classes at the middle and high school levels. This is just to, I think, support the curriculum that we got last year.
Madam President, I move the approval of the purchase of supplemental materials for Spanish classes at middle and high school levels.
Thank you.
Second.
That passes 500. Next is the AP European textbook adoption, which usually would come to us for info and then return, but there's a time factor if I'm understanding this, so they would like us to go ahead and it was here for us to view. I actually went on a couple of these and took some of the tests and forgot a lot of stuff, I guess, since I was in high school.
Usually we do it for information. This is such a narrow, small, targeted book that I would move that the board approve the AP European textbook adoption tonight.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Brian.
That passes 500. Public presentations of the initial successor agreement proposal for Mount Diablo School Psychologists Association and the Mount Diablo Unified School District initial successor agreement proposal to MDSPA. This is for information. Any comments or questions? Now this says action on here, but info, so are they looking for action? Okay, okay. So the next one is to create job description for district equity counselor, which was on our last agenda for information, and it's here for action tonight.
I had a slightly tangential question, which is just, it came up earlier this evening that we appointed an administrator for equity and disproportionality. I just wonder why we have the title as disproportionality versus proportionality, or, but then here we have for district equity counselor.
I believe that that title started when we were put in disproportionality by the state, so we were using their exact term, but it's often, you know, a mouthful. So that is, you know, when we look at equity, it made a lot more sense to say counselor of equity. We often call the position in-house administrator of equity, you know, pretty, and drop that last part.
Okay, thank you. Madam President, I move the board approve item 17.12, which create a job description for district equity counselor.
Thank you. Second. That passes 500. And next is create job description for district safety coordinator, which again came to us last night.
Madam President, I would move the board approve the job description for the district safety coordinator.
Thank you. Second. Passes 5-0. I'm gonna scoot this way while I describe the next one.
Going to hear from me over maybe 30 or 40 minutes. I may be on this one.
Well, if you're gonna do that, do a meeting extension right now.
And,
We're gonna make a motion first.
We know she's not.
Okay, I'll make a motion. Madam President, I move the approval of the job description for Dean of Students.
Second. I was gonna say, who's brave enough to second? Any discussion?
I have a couple. I'm going to start with, this is one of the most disappointing things that has come before the board. As a board member for 8 years, I cannot believe that we are actually moving backwards in time and backwards in terms of, and believe me, I've been an administrator for 25 years. This is something that I support, administration. But what I absolutely, philosophically and practically do not ever support is becoming specialists in the area of site administrators. And a dean of students to me is taking something, stripping away really the gist of what an administrator should be, narrowing it down to 1 or 2 things. This is a terrible job description. It's a useless job description. It's one that actually asks administrators to go from generalists into a broad perspective of working collaboratively across the school to being a very narrow focus that I think does not lead to a productive future for the person in that role. I think it's antiquated. I think it narrows it down, and I think it's appalling that we are even sitting here tonight talking about approving this. That's how strongly I feel about it. In all my years of working with WASC, of being a site administrator, of training thousands of people, this is, to me, moving backwards in time and backwards away from the breadth of administration and into something that's such a little niche. I just cannot, in good faith, support this whatsoever.
Okay. I heard there was a great dean of students one time called Dr. Meyer.
It doesn't mean individuals can't be great in administration, but to offer this up in Mount Auburn Unified to me is like a decades old, antiquated, narrow-minded thinking. And it doesn't mean an individual isn't great in every administrative role. It's the concept of even putting this into existence. So I cannot at all support this.
Okay.
I'm taking names of people who do.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
You're gonna ask me to comment.
There's nothing
yeah.
I can say that.
First of all, I'm so happy to be alive in a democracy where we get to vote and we each have our own individual opinions and disagreements peacefully.
I don't know, I think she
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's wait till after.
I will say the intention, this role is not designed or intended to be a specialist so much as someone who is in the pipeline towards administration. So it's a step before the vice principal role. It really is designed and intended, and those who were successful at it and moved on learned a lot when they were in that position. So they wrote distinguished school grants, they did master schedule training, they did a lot of different things, and modeled and watched what other administrators did as far as that teacher evaluation part, which is not which to me is the only thing that is not in this. But it depends on, there are certain names I would never name my children because of who I knew who had that name. So Dean is, I didn't name my child Dean, but you may have a negative association with it. I had a positive association. So I will share. The intention was we have some people who are jumping into a high school, a big high school, from the classroom, and that's a big jump. So the stair step to learning all of the other things, ideally it happens in the classroom as well, but this is another step towards that.
There's no fiscal impact listed for this item. Can you?
DMA
Well,
range at the bottom.
Yeah. It is, but for perspective, it's right below a middle school vice principal. So the middle school vice principal has the duties of evaluating teachers and doing that more difficult part. That's kind of the last step. That's the part that they should learn in this role and watch. But no, that is where it is. So it's not like a vice principal would say, you know.
But is this a creation? How many? What's the total fiscal impact?
We don't know where we're going to have them at this point. This is the job description. We have some larger schools that have said they wanted to have this in lieu of a vice principal, and they're looking at not only their own personal, the site accounts as well as central accounts. But no, this is for the job description, and we would bring back any fiscal impact.
So, would the intention be to have multiple deans at different at individual high schools, or limited to one at each high school?
We have had two
I
schools.
think we should just make everyone a dean in every.
A dean in every, my metaphor of democracy, a dean in every pot. Okay, that was bad. But there have been two schools who have had a reduction in their vice principals who are saying they would like to have this as a support.
Versus a reduction.
Versus zero, yes.
What I did appreciate was the option to revisit in 2019. I would like to think of that option as that we intentionally revisit it in 2019.
I'm going to say a couple more things here. What you said, Dr. Meyer, does not make me feel better. And I respect and support you incredibly. I absolutely disagree with everything you said on this. Because the fact that, and I know this from being a vice principal, an assistant principal, and a principal, you're talking about training wheels, and you're talking about people being led into administration, and that's just not a valid way to have it happen. There isn't, and I went in like all of us do, from teaching into vice principal. And the way you do it really is a smart principal, smart districts actually encourage teacher leadership and that growth. And so that you're ready for leadership opportunities to become a vice principal. It's not saying that we need a little baby step in the middle, kind of training wheels for an administrator. At some point, you'd have to get in there and do it. And the other smart thing that I learned as a vice principal was the notion that I learned it all. And you're starting to put this dean into other jobs that are really a vice principal's job. It's an absolutely redundant, unnecessary, narrow-minded niche. And when you start looking for other opportunities for this person, it's because you're saying that the job description is so narrow and so blocked in that you need to find other things for the dean to be doing. And that is the very problem with being a dean. People in jobs can be wonderful, but the job description is such a limiting straitjacket that if you start looking for other opportunities, what you now have is called a vice principal. To add another administrative layer, I think, is bureaucratic and unnecessary. And I'm a big supporter of school administration because I spent a long time in that. But I like to see people get in and have plenty of opportunities. I like to see administrators supporting teacher leadership and giving you experiences that prepare you to be a vice principal. And I like to see principals give vice principals and assistant principals opportunities that lead them to a principalship if that's where they're so inclined. So I think it's just absolutely one of the most narrow job descriptions I've seen. I think it adds another layer of bureaucracy. I think it's another cost that goes out the door, and I'd rather see money put into a vice principal where you broaden the perspective and you build a bigger leadership team, and that's the end of it for me.
Okay.
All due respect to Ms. Hanson, I mean, I do learn a lot from her all the time, and given her experience. And I mean, seriously, she has a great experience, and so I think her points are very well taken. I do think, that I want to see Dr. Meyer have this opportunity. This obviously came from some good thinking, I think, in her experience as well. So I think particularly, we're just talking about a job description right now. And I think, going into it thoughtfully and trying it out at places, I'm actually fine with that. So I will be supporting it.
And that passes 4-1. I don't know why our little red check isn't showing. We see that one reporter right there.
Because later I'll be back saying.
Okay. Breakfast and lunch price increases for 2018-2019 school year for action tonight was brought to us last month.
Madam President, I move that the board approve item 17.15, breakfast and lunch price increases for the 2018-19 school year.
Second. Voting in favor of the rights. And that passes 5-0. Next, Measure C proposal, project warehouse upgrade, MDUSD food nutrition services. This is for action.
Madam President, I move that the board approve item 17.16, Measure C proposed project warehouse upgrade, MDUSD food and nutrition services.
Thank you.
Second.
Do you want to hear you smoking over there?
I'm done, I moved on.
I'm going to vote in favor of this, even though I had some real questions or challenges around the fiscal amounts. But I would appreciate all the detailed information that's can be made available, that it be made available during the process. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We just do it if there's no presentations.
And no more talk about deans.
Okay, that's right, 5-0.
It's done, you're on your own.
Okay, 1717, food nutrition services, new bank account with Unified Financial Credit Union. This is for info. So did anybody have any questions they wanted answered tonight or concerns?
I'm always in favor of reduction of bank fees, so, Madam President, I move that the board approve item 17.17. Oh, I was that excited about the reduction. So, next meeting.
Anticipation to August 13th?
Yes.
1718, ratification of award to Home Construction Builder, Inc. for 2010 Measure C modernization Group 4 restroom renovations at Gregory Gardens Elementary. Action item.
Madam President, I move that the board approve item 17.18, ratification of award to Home Construction for Measure C modernization restrooms at Gregory Gardens.
Second.
Thank you. Vote. And that passes 5-0. Next is memorandum of understanding, MOU, between Mount Diablo Unified School District and the MDUSD Education Foundation Action. That was brought to us at the last meeting. Any questions or?
So we just gotta.
I was gonna say changes.
Yeah.
We just got
And in the interest of time, I just wanna just point out really that it's still, I have no objections to this, I just curious to know how we could do it. On the fourth page, there's page number is a little funny now. So it says 3, but it's really in your hands, the 4th page. That one. It still talks about us communicating district priorities and long-term plans as it deems necessary. So just at maybe when we do our reorganizing, or not, what do we do? At the beginning of the year, we do like a retreat, and then we can address that. I'd just like to know how we see ourselves doing that.
Okay.
And
That's
then,
why I put the language in as board deems necessary. I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't do it, you don't do it. But
Well, I think if we're saying that we should at least talk about
I
it.
think it's an issue of just making sure that the foundation is comfortable with where they're going, getting any direction from you.
Right. Yeah, like I'm in favor of the notion. I just think we need to be more intentional about how we address it. And then on the what's the mark, the 5th page is references strategic planning. So the district will conduct strategic planning in order to determine the level of fundraising being undertaken by the foundation. So.
You already have a strategic plan.
We got rid of that for the LCAP to modernize. We have to keep moving forward, not backwards to deans and other things.
So-
Referring to the LCAP.
In the future.
I think if we just change that to LCAP, we would probably accept that, I would think, right now. I'll change that.
Larry, were you, is this blue, we have a copy here, blue is your
Yes.
suggestions? Okay, great.
Hopefully it's grammatical. We'll see.
I just wanted to make sure the source was reputable.
Just to make my point clear that I think those things should be talked about by this board at some point in time. Thank you.
That action item, yep.
Madam President, I move the approval of the memorandum of understanding between Mount Dahlia Unified School District and the MTUSD Education Foundation. Thank you. We're approving the one that we're just giving us, which has
As
been
presented
posted.
tonight.
Yep. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Shanky, do I need to ask for a roll call vote?
Oh, because of the, Ms. Mayo is on the foundation board. She can simply abstain
Okay,
because it's not a financial interest, it's a
that's
board.
another discussion we should have, I think, at the beginning of the year about that whole process, yeah. And that's 401. The next item is revision of board policy 5030 student wellness. It is here for information tonight. Anybody want to give any comment? I bet not at this point. Okay.
I
1720.
actually did.
Oh, you did?
It'll be brief. I would just ask that there be the removal of there's a list of resources here. I would like to see 2 of them removed, which I can certainly make the motion at the next meeting, but I'll just share what they are.
Yeah.
One is the California Healthy Kids Resource Center. From what I can tell, that is no longer active and the website is no longer working. And I would also suggest the removal of the Dairy Council of California, just based on the fact that the companies that make up the Dairy Council have a vested interest in promoting the sale of more of it. So I would request the removal of those 2.
Okay. Now, 1721, authorization for the superintendent to make interim appointments, create FTE, full-time equivalent, and approve provisional internship programs, variable term waivers, and board authorizations under Ed Code 44256B and Ed Code 442582 in advance of the board meeting on August 13, 2018. I think this is something.
Oh, I was just gonna put that in my motion. I move that the board approve the authorization for the superintendent to make interim appointments, create FTE, approve additional internship permits, variable term waivers, board authorizations, in advance of our next board meeting on August 13th.
Second. Which is pretty standard.
I do trust her.
Just gonna go appoint like 12 deans.
All right, that passes 500.
I'm known for a few things over my board career.
Do not need a meeting extension, so we are adjourned.